One is the International Year of Creative Economy. How can Malaysia create a sustainable and resilient creative economy, boosting the industry's significance? Let's discuss Malaysia's largely untapped creative economy right now on Money Matters. Welcome to Money Matters with me, Tamina Kausji. On today's episode, we speak to Cultural Economy Development Agency, Cendana. This government agency is meant to build a vibrant, sustainable and ambitious cultural economy for Malaysia. With me now is Cendana Chief Executive Officer, Izan Satrina Mohamed Salehuddin. Welcome to Money Matters, Izan. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Pleasure to have you in the studio with us, Izan. So, Izan, let's get started off by you telling me a little bit more about what exactly encompasses the creative industry with regards to the work that Cendana does.
Well, in general, creative industries are those based on individual creativity. So you were talking about advertising or arts and craft, architecture, design, fashion, film. But under Cendana, which was launched in September 2017, our early focus is in performing arts, visual arts, and independent music in small and medium spaces. And also recently we started work in craft when Penjana Plan for the Creative Industries was announced in July. So we are a unit of My Creative Ventures Sendirian Berhad, and My Creative Ventures is a government-owned company of Minister of Finance Incorporated, and we report to the Ministry of Communications and Multimedia. So like you rightfully said, we do look into shaping a vibrant and sustainable, ambitious cultural economy for Malaysia. And what that really means is about realizing an economic potential for the arts and culture sector.
Absolutely. Now, when, of course, we speak about realizing the economic potential, Izan, of course, we've got to look towards the observations made by Cendana about how the creative industry, which, of course, has been one of the hardest hit globally, not just in Malaysia, when it comes to the ongoing pandemic. So,
that's right. I mean, we have had 2 surveys conducted this year. First survey was measuring the impact of COVID-19 on the arts. And in that survey that was conducted in April, generally 94% are either fully or partially earning an income from the arts. And so 93% of them have been negatively impacted. 70% of them have lost most or all of their income. So the same group of applicants who took their survey are basically trying to care for their family members, trying to put food on the table, caring for themselves, or paying their colleagues in projects that they undertake. And the second survey measured the propensity of Malaysians coming back to arts activities and arts venues. So in that, we basically track sentiment in Malaysian audiences and their willingness to return.
Right.
Now, in that survey, which was a bit...
anything hopeful in there?
Well, I mean, there is some glimmer of light, perhaps, in the sense that there is data for us to work on. And that data we use to design response packages for the artists.
That's right.
Because in that survey, we realized that 91% of Malaysians do not feel safe returning to art venues. And it may take them up to 12 months to come back to the arts. So we must bear in mind, in terms of that data, the likelihood of them returning and the need to assist our artists in terms of their cash flow during that period.
Absolutely. So I love the fact that Cendana is already using the access to data, but in a big data sort of overview, because that is actually what will help us to move forward. So where are we now in December, Izan, looking at Cendana's refining packages all the way since June, when Penjana was still announced, to today, so that it goes out to as many beneficiaries as possible?
So in July, the Malaysian government announced a 225 million package.
That's right.
For the creative industries, of which Cendana was in charge of 10 million to benefit the arts and culture sector. Now, when I say 10 million to the arts and culture sector, we need to be also mindful that there are other grants and loans under this whole package that's administered by My Creative Ventures and also MDEC. Under the 10 million grant, we have by January, fully approved all the applications to the program. There were 1,542 applications for Chandana's programs, and of which by January we are anticipating more than 600 approval in terms of applications. That's about 41% approval rate, and 10 million would have been committed to all these applicants nationwide. Most of the funding goes to the craft sector.
Right.
41% goes to them.
Well, that makes sense as well, since crafts is still something that you can continue on a work-from-home basis.
Yes.
Right.
And followed by the other sectors like independent music, performing arts, then only visual arts. So those are the sectors we were tracking under the 10 million grant.
Right, fantastic. Now, there's also a variety of schemes, initiatives such as your live event grants, digital velocity programs. Let's talk about the live event side of things. How has that been happening, particularly in the online spaces?
Well, I think most of the live events had to pivot to go online. So whether it is a hybrid event where it is a mix of some audience being physically present, with SOP compliance, but of course, but also it being streamed live or recorded was done. But since then, we've gone into RMCO where no Malaysians can converge at one place, so no physical events can literally take place as well, but purely online, meaning that you are performing and you're either streamed or recorded. Now, that is good and great to at least keep things moving. But at the end of the day, I think the business model must change in the sense that we must bear in mind the cost of production.
That's right.
Can no longer be like how it used to be because you're not able to recoup from ticket sales or sponsor like pre-MCO.
Absolutely. So we'll go a little bit deeper into that. Thank you, Izan.
No worries.
We take a short breather now. When we'll come back, we'll be discussing challenges in the creative industry. Find us on Twitter. Share your thoughts on how the creative industry can improve and edge even higher. Welcome back to Money Matters. If you're just joining us, we're speaking to CEO of Chandana, Izan Satrina, Mohammed Salehuddin. Izan, so moving on from there, now speaking about the creative industry's current contribution to the country's GDP at about a mere 2%. So now how do we upscale it to something which is a much meatier chunk of the GDP, particularly looking at our regional neighbors? You've got Singapore, slightly higher with 3.2, Indonesia 7.8, particularly considering the size and scale of the Indonesian economy, quite considerable.
Yeah, well, that's a favorite question from a lot of people on playing regional. Now, if we take a look into the sort of commitment or resources that are put into this sector, the government of Malaysia has generally been quite instrumental in the growth, in spurring the growth of the creative industries via various public agencies and resources that's put behind it as well. Now, if we look into the current budget that has been announced for the arts, and I'm talking only on the arts, 15 million for Chandana, it's about, putting it against the Malaysian population, that's about 50 cents per person. But in developed countries, they spend up to 25 ringgit per person.
That's right. The culture and the atmosphere, particularly in society, is completely different.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, it doesn't mean it's bad. It's all not that bad. It takes time. And we'll need to also show and track the impact of the arts to the wider economy.
Absolutely.
You are right, 2%. It's been 2% for the past 5 years, as a matter of fact, for the Malaysian creative industries to the economy itself, compared to the region, which is up to 9%.
That's right.
But Malaysia is quite big in terms of manpower in this sector. 1 million Malaysians are hired in this creative industries.
Exactly.
So whilst perhaps the number of the contribution is lower, we can definitely bank on making sure that this industry provides jobs to our Malaysians.
Absolutely. I mean, if you want to look really big picture, then of course there's the BTS effect on South Korea's economy, worth 3.6 billion USD annually.
Yes.
Absolutely. Now, moving on from there, what would you say are some of the major industry pain points at the moment when we speak of challenges, Izan?
Well, there are various challenges in the creative industries, and if I take it from the lens of Chandana, we would look into our strategic pillars, which is energizing the arts, which is looking from the demand perspective, audience base, trade engagements, purchase of content. And we look at the supply side, which we call empowering the communities, is how do we scale up the capabilities of our artists and cultural workers, and how do we provide platforms to increase their opportunities for success? What do they need? Funding, attachment opportunities, exposure to new markets.
Absolutely.
And if you look at the third strategic pillar we have, which is reorganizing policies, we would look into a policy perspective, whether the policies in place is enough for us to move the needle in the creative industries. So challenges come in this 3 different perspectives, and we would have to tackle each of it concurrently, ideally. But if you ask me what's the first thing we would look into,
that's right, immediately.
Immediately, one thing that can move the needle is policy.
Absolutely. That'll make all the difference,
yes,
right?
Definitely.
And from there, though, it is also a very good time, despite everything that COVID has brought about, Izan, because the government is having up-close discussions with many agencies and relevant ministries. So how about a far more dynamic and aggressive approach with total financial discipline and maturity? How would that play out for the creative industry, though, which is, of course, also known for being airy, expressive, and at the same time, you do need to survive?
Yes. Well, the creative industries in general has been a center point for the National Malaysia Plan every 5 years. And I see that they have moved from preserving Malaysians' heritage and culture to developing Malaysia's arts and culture via public partners, public-private partnerships. And eventually in the next Malaysia Plan, they looked into basically providing loans as a way to spur the growth, and also international activities being brought into Malaysia. And we're quite excited to see what's going to happen in January, where the 12th National Malaysia Plan will be announced. And it could be a game changer in the sense that if there is, a top-down approach is still somehow the culture here.
That's right.
It's very imperative for the ground up. The groundswell is very essential. But both need to meet somehow for it to actually move. And I say that's with the kindest respect that both government and the civil society need to move together to move the needle in the creative industry.
Absolutely. I think you make some great points there, particularly speaking of the fact that we don't really have the time. It's rather urgent right now to wait for the trickle-down effect, so to speak, right? Absolutely. Thank you, Izan.
No worries.
Now, let's take a short breather. In the meantime, do follow us on Twitter and let us know your thoughts on the discussion so far. Welcome back to Money Matters with me, Tamina Kaushi. We're discussing the creative industry in Malaysia. Now let's move on and take a look at 2021's course of action for Chandana. So Izan, speaking about which, the Finance Minister has said that the creative industry could make vital contribution to high-growth sectors. What is Chandana's plan for the year to come?
Well, I think we do have a medium-term, long-term plan, but for the immediate plan, which is 2021, we are looking at continuing the basic funding programs that there are as a way to continue nurturing the scene and preserve manpower. But also at the same time, we're taking the opportunity to work on building data to ensure that we systematically advocate for the arts, and also at the same time upskill the sector and the industry whilst realizing its economic potential. So there can be new programs and potentially more lobbying for better policies, distinctive policies for the creative industries.
That's right. We do keep coming back to the fact that we do need stronger policies, even when it comes to not just short-term survival, but even mid-term sustainability, long-term risk mitigation. What would be on Chandana's wish list?
Many, but as we're pragmatic, there will be a few. I think ones would be good, would be obviously reduction of entertainment tax as a way to stabilize the scene. Currently, the scene is paying about 25% entertainment tax. There's also policy for allowing Malaysian artists to come into schools to teach, so as a way to diversify their income, and also for young Malaysians to experience a Malaysian artist teaching them, and more. I can go on.
Absolutely, but that seems like the most actionable route forward. To see actually things happen though on a broader scale, there would need to be a national support ecosystem encouraging uptake of creative careers, not just for new graduates, undergraduates, but even at the primary school level. How do we start that sort of sensitization from a Ministry of Education perspective? Izan, your ideas?
Well, we have been very fortunate to actually have kicked off the collaboration with Ministry of Education. We rolled out 2 programs specifically for arts education. One is of which we take and subsidize young Malaysians to experience arts in professional arts venues or activities. So they go to a gallery, they do workshops together, they meet curators as a way to gain first positive experiences in the arts. But the second scheme that we have is Artists in School program, where we train our artists in pedagogy, in child safety protection, in management of children during COVID-19, and we bring them into schools to teach. And we actually start in public primary schools, Sekolah Orang Asli, and also special education schools. So we'll be continuing that.
So definitely leaving no one behind in that sense. Now let's move swiftly into, Izan, your thoughts on how the public and private sector can further collaborate to achieve a much more sustainable creative economy for the year to come.
Well, during this period, we have seen private sector perhaps pause temporarily their allocation for the arts, or perhaps reallocate the allocation to things that are more important, making sure that people have homes, people have food on the table during this period. But as 2021 comes along, we are hoping to, of course, invite the private sector back into the arts, use the corporate tax deduction that is readily available and administered by the Ministry of Tourism, Arts and Culture, as a way to support the scene's development. It can come in the form of supporting in education. It can come in the form of funding programs or specific programs that will also serve their objectives and KPI.
Absolutely. And just before I let you go, Izan, would it be ideal to have a specific ministry itself in charge of the creative arts?
We've had one before, to be honest, but I'm not answering your question, am I? But in many other countries, there are specific ministries that take charge of cultural creative assets. That would be ideal in Malaysia, but that is not the case now. So there is a Majlis Pembangunan Industri Kreatif that is chaired by both Minister of KKMM and Minister of MOTEC as a way to better coordinate the cultural and creative assets and its growth.
Thank you for joining us on Money Matters, Izan. Before we go, find us on Twitter and let us know your thoughts about today's discussion. We'll be back next week with more money insights that matter. Till then, I'm Tamina Kausji. Thanks for watching and stay safe.